Let's now take a look at the top stories published in the newspapers from the national capital. My co-anchor Amit Arora went through the newspapers earlier this morning.
Good morning. Leander Pace may have made an early exit at the US Open, but Rohan Bopanna seems to be compensating more for that as the Indian Express carries this picture of Rohan Bopanna along with his Pakistani partner Aisamullah Qureshi. They have made it to the final, so good luck to them. The Hindu carries the headlines, Amend or Withdraw Armed Forces Act from some areas. Omar Abdullah, he did meet Prime Minister yesterday in Delhi. The Cabinet Committee on Security will discuss Kashmir on Friday. And the picture also carries, the paper also carries a picture of Syed Ali Shah Gilani, who's been arrested at his residence on Wednesday. That's a preemptive move. The Indian Express also carries the headlines of ATS claiming breakthrough in Pune blast probe. To held yesterday, the Maharashtra ATS chief Rakesh Maria did hold a press conference and conveyed that. Remember, the German bakery blast that took place on February 13 was the first terror attack in the country after the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. The Statesman has got the headline, US state bans outsourcing and move is discriminatory, is what NASSCOM had to say. The same story is also carried by the Economic Times as it headlines, India protests Ohio offshoring ban. Is it the first of many cases, and what would be its likely impact to the Indian companies? Another interesting story in the Economic Times is headline, High Court says Vodafone must pay tax on Hutch buy. Now, this could be a landmark judgment by the High Court because the significance is that this is the first time an Indian court has ruled whether Indian tax authorities have jurisdiction over a transaction which has been between two overseas corporate entities, and it concerns a business venture in India. But as the paper says, the next round, Supreme battle, it'll go to the Supreme Court. Let's see what happens there. Hindustan Times carries an interesting headlines. Monkeys spread terror in East Delhi. Even as Delhi tries to put its best face forward for the Commonwealth Games, hoping to project itself as the city of future, a large part of Delhi is still fighting the old menace, monkeys. Let's end the press review with a good note. And this is the bottom anchor of the Times of India. In 2011, Greater Noida on Formula One circuit. It's official, India will host its first ever Formula One Grand Prix on October 30 next year. And the venue is not too far from Delhi. It's about 50 kilometers from here, Greater Noida. Surely a very good news story for motorsports lovers. Back to you in the studios. And now for a discussion on the newspaper headlines published from Delhi, we have with us senior journalist Aditi Fadnis Mehta. Aditi, very good morning.
Morning.
Well, let's take this headline from the Tribune first. Omar tries to pitch for Eid package with Prime Minister. He met Prime Minister in Delhi yesterday, and the paper says Special Pass Act may go from Jammu, Sambha, Srinagar, Ganderbal. What elements could the proposed package have?
Well, it's been a long-standing demand of Kashmiris that Armed Forces Special Pass Act should be revoked in some areas, but the government has not really taken a view on this because it has other implications. It's now possible that as part of a offering on Eid, the government may remove the application of this quite draconian act from some parts of J&K. We have tried this in the northeast, and the Imphal town, which was where this was active, once things came back to normal in Manipur, Imphal town was taken out of the ambit of the Armed Forces Special Pass Act. Armed Forces Special Pass Act is draconian because it allows the army to enter people's houses, to do cordon and search operations without any warning. It can shoot people and give.
So you think not only in these four places it should go from the entire region itself?
No, I'm not saying that. I think there are other reasons for the act being in operation. It was done when VP Singh was the Prime Minister.
So what are the advantages then?
I wouldn't say it's an advantage, but certainly it indemnifies to some extent the army taking things in their own hands. So this is possibly one step towards the Jammu and Kashmir police being much more active in areas where this will be
Well, the
operational.
army has vociferously been opposing any dilution, and dilution is one of the expectations in this Eid package, which is likely to be announced by the Prime Minister. Do you think any dilution will, to what extent do you think it will affect the army's to effectively operate in militancy hit areas, and to what extent do you think this act has been successful in aiding the army in anti-militancy operations in Jammu and Kashmir and in the northeast, where it's been there for some 52 years?
Certainly, it's been very active. I mean, the army has always pitched for Armed Forces Special Powers Act because they feel that rather than be shot in the back by people who who hold guns, they need to be proactive in taking out their gun and shooting. What the advantages of this act are, I find it hard to say.
Right.
To be quite truthful, because the reasons for militancy are different. On the other hand, the army has a case,
Right.
So it's quite a complicated issue.
Right. Aditi, another complicated issue was the farmers' protest. We did see how they protested in Aligarh, Agra, and yesterday, as Indian Express headlines, Supreme Court says UP government takeover of land for development along expressway. So you welcome the judgment?
With caveats, the judgment is good because it's come quickly, and you are not waiting for years and years for a compensation issue to be settled. But on the other hand, it's also true that the Supreme Court has addressed the limited issue of the process that was used in acquiring land. The fact is, compensation to those whose land has been lost continues to be an open question. Now, we know that a rehabilitation policy is in the works, and a bill will probably come in the next session of Parliament. Several states have, bowing to the needs of development, have evolved their own packages for compensation to compensate farmers for land they've lost.
Right.
Right.
Orissa has a different model, Haryana has a different model. So I think we need a comprehensive compensation package.
Okay.
Right. Aditi ji, let's take our focus to the US state of Ohio now, which has some bad news for Indian IT companies by banning outsourcing. How do you think will this impact Indian IT companies, the BPO industries in India, and what's the possibility of this being replicated by other states considering it's election season in the US?
You've put your finger on it. It is election season in the US, and that's why we are hearing all these things happening. Two important companies, Infosys has already invested some money in Ohio, and I think Wipro had plans to do so. Well, I mean, outsourcing makes it cheaper for these companies, for American companies, to run operations. Yes, it involves lots of jobs, but it's also it makes it more competitive.
But it's good news for an American, for an average American, good news. He'll get employment now.
I'm not sure if he'll get employment now, but
we'll certainly
it's a
lose jobs.
political-
We'll lose jobs.
It's a political issue.
We know that US President Barack Obama is visiting in the visiting India in the not so distant future now, and the nuclear operationalization of the nuclear deal will be high on the agenda, and India is set to offer some $10 billion of nuclear business to American companies. Do you think India should leverage this and send out a strong message during his visit?
I'm sure India will do its best to leverage it, but I'm not sure if there's such a clear quid pro quo between decisions that are essentially political and decisions that are business.
Right. Now that the Economic Times has got this headline, India protest of Ohio offshoring ban. Another headlines that the paper has is High Court says Vodafone must pay tax on Hutch buy. Now, is it a landmark judgment by the High Court that they should pay capital gains? And I've got the figures here. The deal Vodafone had with Hutch was $11 billion. And if they were to pay capital gain tax, they have to shell out $2 billion. What will happen with the Supreme Court now?
I'm pretty sure they'll appeal, so the matter will go to the Supreme Court. Hutch, Vodafone's argument is that the deal was concluded in Cayman Islands and therefore is not subject to tax because Cayman Islands is a tax haven. The government says no, you have to pay tax on a merger and acquisition according to Indian law. The lower court had already ordered that Vodafone pay tax. So yeah, it's a very, very important case.
What's your take? You've been covering business now.
I would not like to speculate on what the outcome of the Supreme Court will be.
But given the fact that operations are in India, Is that a valid argument to give it in favor of the taxman?
I'm sure that the High Court has put its exercise its judgment and has given a verdict.
Okay.
It would not be correct to criticize a verdict, and especially as the matter continues to be sub judice and they're going to appeal.
Taxman for now.
Talking about court cases now, the Lucknow bench of the Allahabad High Court will pronounce its judgment on the Ayodhya, the 60-year-old Ayodhya title suit on September 24. The political fallout of this and the possibility of communal tension has the mind of the government and the centre worried. The Home Ministry has already drawn up a contingency plan and alerted all states and union territories. Do you think even years after the incident happened, it has the possibility of being combustible and reigniting passions?
We would like to think that it does not have the possibility, but actually it does, because an area of religion suspends rationality in many ways. To most Indians, it should not matter who worships there, so long as there is some worship going on. But a lot of Indians don't look at it that way, and certainly efforts will be made to, whichever the losing party is, they will drum up efforts to drum up protests about the judgment. Of course, the matter will again go to an appeal court and appellate court, and I'm sure it will be stuck for another 60 years, which is on the whole a good thing.
Right, but let's hope calm and peace prevails come September 24. Aditi ji, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Well, one of the other stories that's making news in newspaper today is about the motorsports. October next year will see India hosting its first ever Formula 1, and next story concerns races only. It was a unique race where racers from all over Europe participated. It featured penny farthing cycles dating from the middle of the 19th century. The penny farthing was invented in 1871 by James Starley, considered to be the father of the bicycle industry. More in this report.
Held in Knutsford, England, the penny farthing race was an opportunity for many racers to showcase their talent. Just 50 teams were allowed to compete in this once-in-a-generation race, and competitors from New Zealand, US, Australia joined this event. The race features original dandy horse machines, bone shakers and penny farthing cycles dating from the mid-19th century.
Well, a great race takes place every 10 years, and this is the fourth one. And it brings, or this one has brought in riders from all over the world.
The race is run over a 1-kilometer course and lasts for 3 hours. Riders can either ride solo or in a team. For many, the actual riding is not difficult. Rather, it is just getting on and getting off that is challenging.
Absolutely delighted. I'm over the moon. I'm mainly pleased because I've survived it in one piece.
It's tough, and the corners are really, really dangerous. I had a guy leaning on me on the top corner. Yeah, it's good. Hot. It's hard.
Several thousand spectators lined the Moorside circuit and seemed completely mesmerized by the spectacle. The event raised money for Shelter Box, a charity which provides shelter and survival equipment after the world disasters. Bureau Report, DD News.
Well, interesting race there, and it's a wonder how they managed to maintain the balance on those bicycles.
Absolutely. Well, remember, cycling is one of the 17 sports that the 19th edition of Commonwealth will host. A beautiful velodrome has come at the Indira Gandhi Sports Complex. I'm sure that'll attract a lot of viewers.
Right, cycling one of the main attractions there. And finally, if you have any suggestions, you can write to us at breakfastnews@dd.nic.in. For all the latest news and updates, you can log on to our website www.ddinews.gov.in.
Well, it's time for Songam and me to go, but before we conclude today's edition of Breakfast Show, we leave you with glimpses of a tasty cake which is made up of money paper by a chef of Taiwan to reduce carbon emission. Take a look. Namaskar.
Namaskar.